Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Gina Merz, I'm curator here at Kunstverein München, and I'm very happy to be co-hosting this evening with the just very newly founded foundation Salta. And we are very happy to open our space, our archive space that we sit in right now too, for this night of conversation. And as I just heard, this is the very first event of the foundation that is the conversation with three guests that we're having here tonight of the art or artist collective Más Arte Más Acción. Very warm welcome to you. I'm very excited to hear on your thoughts and experiences tonight on running a residency together. Very personal interest of myself because I'm also running the residency which is called Peripheral Alliances here just outside of Munich, which is hosted by Kunstverein München. So I might have a couple of questions on your experiences there. I'm just very excited to also just sit in the audience and listen and engage in these very interesting topics and opening up the stage for tonight.
Well, thank you again to all of you for being here tonight in this afternoon, beautiful sunny day, sharing with us some ideas about how to create a space to reflect. And we would like this to be in itself a space to reflect. So we are not having like a standard lecture with experts with the knowledge on one side and the listeners on the other. What we would like to have more is like kind of conversation in which Fernando, Jonathan, and I will be just basically the ones who will ignite some ideas. We are going to share some of the experience that Más Arte Más Acción has been collecting in more than 15 years of work. But the idea is that you also ask the questions, share your knowledge, intervene whenever you want. So this will be in itself a space to reflect. That's the core idea. And basically we want to share with you what does it mean having a space to reflect, how to create it, what works in creating a space to reflect, maybe some lessons learned from the experience of Más Arte Más Acción in doing that. And the way we are going to do that is basically starting with a short introduction about Más Arte Más Acción, the work we've been doing in Colombia and in other places in the world, some ideas about what is exactly this idea of reflecting, why is that important for the arts, why is that important especially when arts are so involved with communities, with social movements, when arts has this strong connection with social issues, like in the case of Más Arte Más Acción and many other collectives in Latin America or in the Global South. And then we are going to move a little bit more in terms of why international residencies, exchanges among artists are useful, why we should work on that and improve these kind of exchanges. And at the end, we're going to finish with some kind of lessons learned from experience. This is the spirit of Más Arte Más Acción. Doesn't intend to be like the formula to be replicated everywhere. Maybe what is been working for Más Arte Más Acción may not work for others. Maybe yes, maybe the experience we have could be useful for you. Those of you who are starting these ideas, those of you who may have long experiences in this. So it's basically kind of a space to share. So first of all, I would like to say a little bit more about me. I've been collaborating with Más Arte Más Acción first as a friend, then I got involved as some kind of external, I wouldn't say advisor, voice who help Más Arte Más Acción in the process of reflecting. Reflection has been an idea that's been on and on in the work of Más Arte Más Acción, and then I got more involved in some of the projects that Más Arte Más Acción has been developing. So somehow I'm kind of outsider of this process, and that's the role I'm going to play in this conversation. So let's go to the topic. And Jonathan, in the time you've been working with Más Arte Más Acción, many things have been happening. Más Arte Más Acción, now you will hear more, it's an organization in which the idea of reflection, sharing, friendship is at the core of the values. So why don't you tell us, Jonathan, a little bit more about what is Más Arte Más Acción, how Más Arte Más Acción started, and how this idea of creating a space to reflect is being so important for Más Arte Más Acción.
Thank you, Fernando. Can you hear me? Okay. So my voice might be a giveaway. I'm British. I was born in England, raised in Wales, and spent the latter kind of 20 years living in Scotland, in Edinburgh. I met Fernando back in 1995. I was working in the arts in Scotland, and he was one of the artists invited to participate in Vantage, a photographic festival. And a series of kind of moments of encounter led us eventually to travel together in 1997 to the Pacific coast of Colombia. I'm an arts manager, I think you mentioned that. My background is coordinating projects, and I went to art school. I'm the only one trained in art here, but I knew from a very early point that I didn't want to be an artist, but I wanted to facilitate things. So I began working, kind of helping Fernando, supporting him, because I felt very passionate about what he was working on, social, political, environmental projects. And bit by bit, we formed a very strong kind of collaboration, which I think today would be called a collective, perhaps, maybe? Okay, maybe. We have lots of disagreements. So in 1998, I was the director of an organisation in London called London Printworks Trust. I'd moved down to London from Edinburgh, and I was working through this organisation to help train young, mostly black kids who hadn't got the opportunity to access formal education post-school, to find a voice through art. And that's what I was doing for the next 3 years. But in 1998, the turning point, we were invited to write an article for an ecotourism magazine about Choco. And it's a region at that time that was extremely dangerous to travel to for an outsider. It's on just to give you some geography, Colombia is the top left-hand corner of South America. You probably all know that. It's just below Panama and just above Ecuador. And the Choco region on the Pacific coast is disconnected from mainland Colombia by the Andes, the western range of the Andes, and obviously the Pacific is another kind of border. So to get to Nuki, which is halfway up the region, you have to take a boat or you have to fly there. And we went there at a time when, as I said, very few people were traveling there, to write an ecotourism article for a hotel, which was a challenge. And after 3 days, we were taken to a small community of 200 people to visit a mangrove area. And we fell in love with the people that took us on this walk through the mangrove and through the boat trip up the river, and came back a month later to spend a month with that community. And that was just the start of a very solid friendship. So when you talk about friendship, you began working with us as a friend, and I think friendship is the thing that embodies or is embedded in everything we do. It's the starting point, it's affinity, which really is the basis for what we're doing. And it's the affinity that we have, the friendship, that's kept this going. So we didn't have the plan to set up a foundation. We went back to live in London, continued to work there until 2006. In 2006, we were successful in a funding application to the Prince House to work on a community project on the Pacific coast called Casa Chocolate in Nuki. And it was a project aimed at reinforcing the cultural traditions of the region by enabling people to connect with each other from the region. So people were able to come and teach the kids dance, theatre, music, and so on. Because Nuki, although it's very much embedded in the kind of local communities, didn't have access to other regions of Choco, other areas of Choco. So we did that for 2 years. We reorganised that project until 2008. And in 2008, we were thinking, or Fernando more than me actually at that point, of how we could really share the location, the geography and the issues with a wider ecosystem other than ourselves and the local. So how can we connect the local struggles, including the environmental struggles, with a wider international objective? And so at that point we thought we would set up a foundation, and we continued to work on a project basis. The foundation was set up in order to receive funds from outside. And in 2010 to 2011, we had the opportunity to meet people that were running the Arts Collaboratory. And I don't know if anybody here knows or has heard of Arts Collaboratory. It's a group of 25, or network of 25 global south mainly organizations rooted in their communities but dealing with struggles around the environment and social and political issues. So it's mostly Africa, Latin America, and Asia, and some in the Middle East. And we became part of that network, and we decided that we wanted to facilitate connections and create a physical infrastructure to do that. So we worked with a Dutch artist called Atelier van Lieshout. The funding came from Mondrian as part of Arts Collaboratory to build a place in the forest. We just passed the video with the actual place. To build a place which people could come and use as a shelter and spend up to 3 months each in this extraordinary environment. So the idea was to really go against the grain of inviting the artists to the metropolitan centre. Instead, we wanted to take the artists to this extraordinary kind of remote in the sense that it's geographically difficult to find, to access. We have no phone, we have no internet, and it's a place to confront yourself. It's a place to confront yourself behind or with nature. You're really confronted by the natural elements in this location. So the kind of main basis for the project, or the program for the next 5 years, from 2012 to 2016, was exploring utopia. And we wanted to really reimagine what utopia meant in these years leading up to 2016, which was the 500th anniversary of Thomas More's book, Utopia. And utopia means no place or nowhere, literally in Latin, it comes from that. So the idea of trying to build a connection between Choco, an area that's been forgotten by the state, that receives very little support from the state, has no secondary education on the coast, no healthcare, and try to imagine ways of bringing artists and writers and philosophers into that environment to consider utopia, and not necessarily to create anything at the end of it. So we were looking at more to the processes, the thinking, the idea, the space that they would have to reflect. They had the opportunity to contribute to books that we were preparing, writing at that time. They had 10 pages, they could do something, they could make a squiggle, they could take photos, they could write whatever they wanted. And they could do nothing if they wanted as well. So we did that for 5 years, connecting mainly Africa as well, Senegal, Ghana, places where artists were coming from, with the local communities, which is 80% Afro-Colombian descent and 15% indigenous. And the result of that was a trilogy of books called Nowhere Better Than This Place. And they're all available online through the website. So, yeah, sorry if I've gone on too long for that.
I would like to stress something that you mentioned now, Jonathan and Fernando, as an artist, can give you more ideas about that. And why to create a space to reflect in which people need to get out of their zone of comfort. As Jonathan was saying, the space that they have in the Chocó is in the jungle. It's kind of challenge to go there, but at the same time, that experience of going to this place that is far away, disconnecting with technology, a challenge in terms of just reaching the place. It's not a dangerous place, but if you imagine it's in the coastline of the Pacific, the north of the Pacific coast of Colombia, close to Panama, it's quite a challenge. So for those who go there, means really a kind of accepting that invitation, but also exposing themselves to some kind of uncertainty, to some kind of the unknown. Why is that important, Fernando, for that experience, and why you think that this is relevant as a space to reflect?
Well, I think that the importance of that is, of this in particular, this space that we are offering in Colombia, is not like anything else in the world, because it's like the rainforest is such a place where you confront yourself as an organism, as a living organism, like any other organism of nature, which is very forgotten when you live in concrete jungles, let's say, you know, and we distance ourselves from that nature. And what really got me there, Fernando, is that you feel everything moves around you. So you feel like you're alive as well. And this is something that really got me, and I thought I had to share this with other people. And the importance is because I think for everybody, taking a space in life to stop and think, where am I coming from? Where am I going to? Is so important, and it's a luxury in these times because of all the media, the social media and everything. We are immersed in that world. So at the time we started this, there were no phones there. You know, you had to walk like half an hour to the only phone that was in the beach to communicate with the rest of the world. So it was another experience. It was really important for us to share that, because I was so interested in exploring human and these issues that were like so inside me that I needed to get other people to help with that research, let's say. But what was important is that at that time in Colombia, and I think in Latin America, but I think in Colombia there were like many other residencies for artists. It was like really from one day to the next, like hundreds of them everywhere, but in cities and in places that were very connected with the urban. Our aim was like, how can we also connect urban to the rural, but being in that place that is so like remote and so considered off. The Pacific coast in Colombia is considered poor. It's considered there are indigenous and Afro-Colombians, and that's and there's lots of gold and there's lots of wood and natural precious stones and things. But the black communities and the indigenous communities are on the way. So there are many problematics there with the war or the narco traffics and things that we are facing. And that for me as an artist was really like a needed somehow a space to go and explore, because my work immerses in all the levels of society. We are a very complex society in Colombia, and it gives you a lot of interesting spaces to go and explore.
So in that way, and a space to reflect is kind of a concept that you have been developing in this year. It's also an experience, but somehow it's also a piece of art. You know? Now you will see this is the base Chocó, and can you tell us, Fernando and Jonathan, a little bit more about the base as a piece of art in itself? Because it's like the architecture that you have done there has a history in itself. The physicality of the house has also many meanings. So can you tell us a little bit more how the space is also the piece of art?
Yeah, when we were, let's say, we were working in Chocó, in Nuquí, in the town, and we were working with the community, as Jonathan was mentioning, because of Chocolate. We were a little bit tired of this sort of like working too much in this environment. It demanded a lot of our efforts, and I wanted something new that was more like to offer these spaces to one artist that wanted to go there to do nothing from doing nothing, and he gets, or she got paid because we had the money in the foundation, or to do anything they wanted. If they wanted to go and paint all the greens that they found in the forest, or sound record everything they thought it was important from and to work with the community, it was fine. But we needed this space in the top of a tree that we discovered that was lying down there, and it had like 65 or 70 years from being cut. It was like a stone. And when we cut part of that area of forest to plant, we needed to cut a little bit of trees, which was very sad, but it was to plant our own food, which was very important. So we discovered this tree, and we're like, wow, this is the space to reflect. This is to come. This is so we called Juke only South, and he came, and he was seeing the place, and he even thought of the white cube inside the forest and things. And no, look at the tree. You know, the tree is important. So he, I mean, it's a beautiful result, and very, very spiritual and beautiful. There are no walls. You are totally connected to the forest. So I think that's what is important. There is not the space; it's the critical thinking that everybody goes and lives in that space. It's sort of like you can almost feel it, no? All this thinking and all this knowledge that people learn.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms, it is an artwork. It is an artwork inside the forest. It's an extraordinary thing. We didn't anticipate Van Sout building something on top of this trunk. We thought he might use it in some way to access the residency space that he was going to design as an artist-architect. But he worked with what was there, and I think that's what's so important. The shape of this tree that was cut 70 years before we discovered it there was it was a kind of U-shape, like a wave. And he wanted to work with that shape. So the floors aren't flat, they're not level. The only things that are level in the house are the bed and two tables. So you're really made to kind of disorientated when you walk into the space. That feeling that you're destabilized. But at the same time, it doesn't have walls. It's very open. And you feel like you're also in the stage. You're kind of being observed by nature. It's embedded, it's about 50 meters from the beach. This is the trunk, you can see here. This is the platform that he designed. These are Yuval's drawings. This was a kind of maquette we made, a real size maquette. And this was his final drawing, how it should look. There's a little bit of kind of rim, and this is the underside of it. So it's kind of like a wave. In fact, the locals call it the Casa Barco, the boathouse, or houseboat. And imagine it setting sail. And maybe I should just jump a little bit on. So we've just today come from Kassel, from Documenta, which we were invited to join the Lumbum, interlocal Lumbum 3 years ago. And it's a great relief to be here for many reasons. Great changes seen. But we decided to collaborate again with you, Van Sout, on the physical infrastructure that we needed there. Now, we've gone through many, many chapters in Más Arte and many years of self-reflection about our role as an arts organization, about our relationship with community and nature. And we decided that for many reasons we needed to take some time out to reflect on ourselves as an organization after 12, 15 years of intense working in the communities. And we were invited to join Documenta at that time when we were really needing to take the time out. We decided instead to harvest the thoughts and the processes that we were working on and bring them along with the people that we're working with to Documenta, to activate a space. But what we decided was we needed to think about investing some resources back into the collectives, artists that we're working with in Colombia who don't have access to any funds, through an action. And the action was to physically bring the artwork to Documenta and to sell it with the aim of raising, say, €1 million. That was our dream. To bring it in an orange container, to talk about the production economy that we have in Colombia, that you don't invest in anything that's art for art's sake, but it has to be part of the capitalist paradigm. And for many reasons, we decided not to do that. It was a long conversation. We were close to doing it. And instead, we decided to work with this artist Because what is the value of an artwork of that magnitude in the forest? You know, to our neighbours, it's just the casabarco, it's a piece of timber. In Documenta, in this context, in Europe, it would have another value, let's say. So this is a whole debate, a whole discussion. I'm just summarising it, I'm not going too deep. Anyway, there are many things that came out of that discussion, but we've worked with you, Van Lieshout. He's designed the installation of the Mamadog space in the Aui Park in front of the Orangery, and we're activating it for the next 100 days through this program.
In that way, there's kind of, let's say, kind of a loop in terms of Documenta is somehow going back to 10 years ago, but in a different moment. What has changed in this time for Más Arte Más Acción in this process of reflecting, going back, going deeper? Can you share a little bit more of that process of reflecting as an organization?
I'm very bad with numbers, but when did we
The years?
from Más Arte Más Acción?
Oh, in 2017. No,
Yes.
2017.
So I was a bit tired with being directing because I am an artist, so I needed also my space to go and work in my art, and Más Arte was taking so much of my time. So Jonathan also wanted to have some time off, so we stood back and were more like behind in the board of directors. And we asked Ana Garzón, who was working with us, if she wanted to direct organization. And we gave her all the trust to direct an organization that was like the baby, you know. She, of course, everyone has got their own agendas and things. Presented or gave us an idea of what she wanted to do, which was more immersed in working with the communities and form this very strong ecosystem that we are now inviting to Documenta. We are bringing more than 50 people, some from Chocó, some come from like Fernando Serrano, who are kind of friends to the organization, in order to present a series of events and talks and presentations in Casa. If everything goes well, Casa now is lots of things happening. We will be presenting this. We already did 2 presentations and things. So I stood back from that, and then there was the need. Anna, when Documenta invitation came back, I thought I want to go back to help with this project. So we came back to Más Arte Más Acción, and at that time Anna said, "I'm gonna think of leaving," and she left, and we were left again with the organization. But at that time we were like, okay, we need the space to reflect. We have been giving the other people and other artists so many spaces to reflect. Now it's our turn to take it. So we are going to take it when Documenta finishes.
What you say now is, and I'm going to give you the space for questions just in a few seconds, but it's like, when I met Más Arte Más Acción, they were in this process of somehow being a very relevant organization in the country and in the global south, but at the same time being tired. You were in this process of kind of almost being born out with so many projects, so many demands, and so little time for your own. And I would like to stress that now, because sometimes we imagine that organizations are like machines, going and going and going, and especially when they have a social commitment, it is expected that you are always doing, you are always active, you are always committed, and you are always up front, never tired, always holding flags, which is not the reality of an organization. And in the case of Más Arte Más Acción, was so interesting when I met you, because you were just basically saying, I can't stand anymore. I'm so tired. It's so much pressure on ourselves to be up front, to have projects, to get funding, to be published, to be like the well-known, recognized organization. And it was so interesting seeing you saying, hey, I don't want that. I just don't want to be the star in the arts world or holding on my shoulders everybody. I just want a space to do my own things. No? And this is a kind of recognition that there are also limits. And it's good to say, I don't want this anymore. No? It's even good to say, maybe it's the time to stop. Maybe it's the time to say, let's give it a break. Say no to funding, say no to media, say no to getting more projects, and just let things go down slowly as well. So this is a very interesting lesson in terms of, maybe not a lesson in terms of what others should do, but at least an acknowledgement, also recognizing your own limits, our own limits. No? Yeah. So I would like to hear a little bit more, Fernando, before giving the words to the public in terms of this moment as well. It's good to feel it's enough.
No, it's good because even when when we founded Más Arte Más Acción, I made this comment in an event. You know, like I feel like I'm forming this, but I want to feel that if I want to close it and finish it, it's fine. You know, like fine. So I think for this moment we are passing, and this Documenta thing is being quite intense, and I'd rather have my space and think before saying more. You know, I'm very happy with what we have done. You know, seeing our friends arriving for the first time out of Colombia, traveling is amazing. They are just like looking at all the other people. They are meeting people in Caso, and they come from this area so remote, and yeah, it's just amazing.
Maybe to say a little bit about Lumbung, which is the curatorial concept for Documenta. Lumbung is the Indonesian term for a collective rice store, like a granary, and it's a resource which people take when they need, but it's this idea of something which continually, it's alive, it's something there for everybody. And so the Lumbung concept has been something, we call it more buen vivir in our context, but it's something which we've been working through. It's about trust, it's about working in Minga, which is again working collectively with communities to bring force when needed to tasks. So if you need to go and get a boat from the forest, you ask people to come and help you with that, that's a Minga. And there's always support that somebody needs in the community. So we can't forget that we've just been through 2 years of pandemic, and that had a massive disruptive effect on both the Lumbung building with Documenta and also on our own practice. And the way we dealt with that was we were fortunate to be part of Arts Collaboratory and had resources that we could share with people who were seriously at risk of not having food on their plates. Their livelihood was so destabilized by the pandemic. You know, it's easy to kind of forget about that when you're in a context like this. But people were really in precarity, and so coming out of that period of not being physically close to people. The first days, certainly in Castle, was a sense of euphoria, and having that, that space designed by Telly Nisa out in the park, and people like Anna coming along, who we hadn't seen for a long time, and just being able to engage in very intimate, personal discussions in 3 dimensions, and you forget how important that is when you've been on Zoom all this time. We're all exhausted by that. So I think you're right, we're going to take some time out to reflect, but at the same time we have a responsibility to our ecosystem. And that ecosystem, we call it an ecosystem, is other people, the organizations, the people we call artists who can't have that luxury to call themselves artists around us because they don't have the Western kind of training or possibility of just living through their art. Those are the people that we need to think about when we're talking about taking time out.
I guess now that you mentioned this idea of not being in the Zoom screen that we've been in the last 2 years with knowing if someone is there. Remember that we have all these starting conversations in Zoom. Is someone there? Can you hear me? Like this. issue that we don't know who is there. I think we should take a time for hearing your comments now that we have this possibility of being face to face. I would like to invite you to ask questions, comments, anything you would like to say before we go to the closing part of the conversation. So if some of you want to ask any question about the work of Más Arte or what we've been discussing today, feel happy, please to raise your hands and hear your voices. So who would like to start? I was thinking, if this were the map of South America, I guess that's an image that most of you may have in your head. It could be South America, Central America, North America. The Pacific coastline is this little corner here. This would have been Panama. This is the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic, and Caribbean. And the area they've been working is tiny, tiny, isolated area that you need to just go by plane to this town, then take a boat to this other town, then taking another boat to this town. I was able to get to know that area in the late 80s, when there was known like a paradise, totally isolated from Colombia, before the drug dealing industry and the conflict arrived to that area. In the 90s, that corner, because it was the point of connection between South America and Central America, became the battleground for the drug dealing industry, because it's the connecting point to bring the cocaine to the north of North America. Therefore, all the communities, these communities that have been isolated for almost centuries, end up being in the middle of this conflict for territorial control between Colombian army and the drug dealing industry. And that's been happening for more than 30 years. So what was like, let's say, a paradise of inter-ethnical relationships between Afro-Colombians, Native Americans, ended up becoming the center of the war for the last 3 decades. So the place where they are working is in the middle of this situation. No?
But how you fly to where?
So there are many ways.
Just imagine how you get this incredible.
Oh, this is incredible. I mean, the anecdotes that we have, like everything changes because there is like the tide. Everything changes from 1 minute to the next. So, for example, the airport can be closed because at some point, very early years ago, they didn't have a fence in the airplane. So people were crossing the airplane, the runway, just like this. So, sometimes, oh no, we cannot land because there is many people, or the day that you had to push the plane, it's just like that. And very early days, you travel with the pigs and the chicken here. So just to give you an idea, now it's more organized. They even, because the ecotourism is organized, they put the runway longer, so there are 40-seat airplanes. What else? You can also get by a boat, but it takes like 23 hours or something, and there have been like scenes and things like that. What else? No, but the only way is that. But this is very interesting. Why don't we talk a little bit about the Puerto de Tribuga and the Postales del Futuro? Because it's nice to give you an example of one of the projects that is very meaningful to this place.
Okay. So we're totally embedded in the struggles of the locality. And one of the things that's been a shadow over us for the last, been a shadow over the communities for 50 years has been the idea of building a megaport. And this idea of this megaport has been, because we've got deep waters around us, it's the breeding ground for whales that are arriving now, the humpback whales. They come to the north, they breed for June to September, October. And we have national parks around us, but that doesn't stop the idea of the extractivists to build a megaport to take out the timber, to take out the precious metals. And over the last 10 years, that debate or discussion about what development means or what progress means has become a huge topic, because the company behind that, from the center of Colombia, has been pushing the idea that they will build schools, they'll build a new hospital, the community will benefit, they'll have plenty of jobs. So this kind of dream has been sold to the local communities. When we talk about local communities, there are 7 or 8 villages of about 200 to 300 people, and there's a town of 3,000 to 4,000 people in the key. And that debate has raged, so it's quite interesting how younger people who've had the opportunity to leave the region and go and get some education with family in Medellin or in Cali or in Bogota, they created more of a kind of resistance to that idea of what progress meant. And what we did as an organisation, because actually it's very hard to talk about these things directly. Like, we would probably not be here now, like several of our friends, if we were to confront directly the issues that we're facing around drugs, around development. So instead, working through art is the way in which you can actually have these conversations without putting your head above the parapet, because people don't understand art, and you can export the ideas to the metropolis, to international agendas. So we devised with our ecosystem and with the university, the National University in Bogota, and with the Los Andes where you work, this program called Postcards from the Future. And we connected the collectives from Buenaventura, which is the big port in the south of Colombia, the most dangerous place in Latin America, with the community around us in Nuki. And so we got them to send, through learning to make videos together, they made videos and they sent postcards to each other. And again, it's not just a kind of one-off, let's just do this for a year. We're doing this for the last 5 years to engage them and to then try to encourage them to show those and share the ideas that emerged. And the postcards that were coming from Buenaventura to Nuki were showing the devastation and the dangers and the, everything bad, really, dystopian future that they could potentially face. So we're actually going to launch the film that we've made it into a feature film, or they've made it into a feature film themselves, working collectively for the last 2 years. And it's going to be launched in September in Kassel as part of Documenta. So that's just a concrete example. I mean, there are many others.
Any other questions? Well, I'll give one answer and you will continue. I guess, as in many places in the world, this is a place in which all the possible conflicts are concentrated. Yeah, concentrated. Political conflict, economic conflict, climate change, struggles around development, but also resistance, not just for the last 10 years, for centuries. This is a place where the Afro-Colombians escaped in 16th century, 17th century. No? So that area, the Pacific lowlands, has a long, long history of resistance from the Native Americans, from the Afro-Colombians. So somehow, and we're talking about a tiny, tiny area in this connecting point between Colombia and Panama. So it's like a small area where everything that you could imagine is happening. At the same time, these communities have been struggling for long in many different ways, including religion, including artistic practices, and in all these different strategies to struggle, arts has been very important. As Jonathan has said, somehow for the armed actors from the state, arts is like something that doesn't value that much. If you claim for lands, that's important. But if you are doing arts, it seems like that's kind of irrelevant. So this kind of ironic, because somehow art has been a very important place for resistance, has been a very important place for building up connections, for building, and not only connections in the local communities, even internationally. The examples that you have done, bringing people from Africa to the Chocó, is amazing in terms of creating connections that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And arts has been a space for making that. So this is very interesting to see this concentration of inequalities, but at the same time, so many struggles for making a life possible. And this is like what you've seen in these short videos in terms of people finding the ways to make a life that is worth living?
I think, yeah, I mean, following on from that with another concrete example, we don't impose, we share resources, so we have a collective pot, a common pot where we put all the finances that we have, and then as a group, people decide how they're going to allocate them. That's in order so that we're not seen as the people with the power distributing funds. Everybody has an equal right to decide how those funds are distributed. So one of the early projects we decided to work on together with the community was to talk about some of the best things that they have locally, and that's their food. And they have an extraordinary range of banana, plantain, and so on, and access to fresh fish from the sea. And it's an abundance. It's something they wanted to share with the world, this resource, what they have, and also trying to change the perception that they're not just los pobres, the poor from the poor black people from the Pacific coast. So they started a gastronomy festival, and we brought 3 or 4 chefs from Colombia to work with them for a month. An artist called Rikritila Benilla, who's a well-known contemporary artist who works with food. He's a Thai artist. To spend a month working with the people, mostly the women in the community. And they cooked together, and they made a cookbook together. They made a recipe book, a beautiful object, which they then sold to the few tourists that came to the community. And that has, in the last 10 years, turned into an international food festival. And they're on the map in Colombia. They've got a restaurant that was paid for, it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in reality. And they have this collective of women that take turns in cooking incredible food. And it's something that they feel extremely proud of. So, it's a seed that was planted 10 years ago together, and that's grown into something which, I think they're extremely proud of.
Yeah, any other question? Yeah, at the moment, Más Arte Más Acción is a very small team. Alejandra, Rosana, Paula, Jonathan, and there is these other 2 kind of volunteers that come and go. So, but yeah, I think it's one of those ideas that we have. We have created this organization, in that sense, call ourselves like a collective. I think we are like a organization with people with different perspectives, interests, and we get together and we make things happen with other people outside the organization, but that become our ecosystem. In that sense, I think there is lots of possibilities that at this point, Más Arte Más Acción can sustain itself if we organize in a way that it could, if we want to take a back seat, we could.
Last year we decided we wouldn't apply for funds from the Ministry of Culture in Colombia, but instead we'd support other organizations that we're friends with to do it. So we'd help them write their funding applications. And they were successful. And so that was brilliant. Now they know, they're better equipped to write the funding applications. They're still not the kind of funding applications we believe in or think we should be part of, but at least they have economic support. And we work very closely with other institutions like the Goethe Institute. They fund 2 residences a year, or have done for the last 5 years, the British Council. But again, our work is to try to change the paradigm in their thinking. So we've learned through Arts Collaboratory, through working with people like Rune Gruber, how important it is to fight that system of accountability and try, we don't write reports. Reports are there, they're designed for you to lie. How many people came to this talk? How many people came to your event? They're not designed to have a kind of conversation about the value of a single conversation, for example. So yeah, I see our role potential in the future is supporting our ecosystem to be self-sustaining and dissolve into them.
Yeah, I guess it's all, we work a lot with, we don't have many like open calls. That's not the way we work. We work a lot about what your heart says. So it's like forming chemistry with the artists or the possible people groups or whatever coming to visit us by the word of mouth, by, yeah, it's first like, you know, we tend to remain friends with the people who go there, you know, and they come and visit us once again and again, or we go and visit them. So everyone has got their own needs. So they sometimes, you know, like, I would like to go and do that. Yeah, we can help you connect through here, through there. I mean, there are many ways, but I cannot tell you like we have like a formula. This is like this, or we send like with themes to choose from. No, it's like all very much acted from the heart. Yeah.
So yeah, the international residences tend to have the funds to support, so somebody can go along. It's a very, you know, it's not a place you can just turn up to. There's no shops. So you need to have the food organised, you need to have the transport well organised, you need somebody there to accompany you. If it's somebody who doesn't speak Spanish, that's also really essential that you have somebody who can communicate, even on a simple level. But as Fernando said, there's no formula. And you know, we had, talking of big name artists, we had Pichapong Wirasethical, the filmmaker from Thailand, spend 3 months with us. We invited him for a month. He came for 3 months and he wrote the film Memoria, his latest film that's shot in Colombia with Tilda Swinton. And so we had an amazing time accompanying him. And it was a two-way process with him, with teaching. We've had artists who come for 5 days. We had somebody from Contemporary And magazine, Gina, came for 1 day about 2 months ago to write an article. But something extraordinary came out of it about the concept. It's a very conceptual piece of writing. I mean, it's totally varied. And we do, if we can, like to overlap for 1 or 2 days and then give the space to the artists, because basically there's the base, which is where we give to the artists, and then there's another building with 3 bedrooms that we can use.
And yeah, there are some people who maybe, but very few examples that people that haven't really, how do you say, click with the space. Because they are afraid of animals, because they, you know, like the time that we were having this amazing, beautiful gastronomic festival with this chef, which is like now the best chef in Colombia, and the chefs from there as well, Enrique and everyone. And then Kansi, who is an artist from Senegal, joins, and we are preparing the most delicious food, and it happens to be Ramadan for him. So he was like, I am just at this table like with the most beautiful food. And he's like, I think I'm gonna skip Ramadan, but then he like, and he tried the first day, and then no, I cannot do it tomorrow. So the next day he was in the beach there doing his thing. Beautiful, from those are beautiful films as well in the webpage of Mama. But yeah, these are examples that happen there, and they just, you know, form part of our everyday life then.
I think for us as kind of coordinators, organisers and programmers, whatever, I think go with your instincts and trust. So I think you can be quite, really just go with your instincts. In terms of building friendship, I think building friendship is more important than making art, as one of our kind of recent mottos. go with trust. Is trust. Trust is at the heart of everything.
Well, I know that this conversation will go on, and I'm sure you would like also to have more personal conversation with this, so I think we'll... Yeah, we have more. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
It's in the park, right by the orangery, tucked away behind a hedge near the River Fulda. And this is it. So it is a stage on a trailer with a tent that looks like a kind of war-like encampment. It's made of canvas, recycled canvas. Everything's recycled. That's the toilet. That's a compost toilet. And the main kind of Mamadok space is this. Looks like an armoured tank, and it was designed by the Televenisat as a cinema, as a mobile cinema to go into neighbourhoods in Rotterdam, kind of more dangerous neighbourhoods, to show films, to project films from.
No idea.
Daytime and show films.
Yeah, so we can share. We've got a rolling programme, 17 films that we've made in the last few years, and we've got Fernando designed a table around. The reason we're where we are is because we found this magnolia tree last year that we wanted to bring into the conversation. So it's a very beautiful magnolia tree. And we also discovered when we were in Kassel a year ago that the forests, the monoculture forests of Germany are dying because of the bark beetle infestations. And we wanted to, again, bring into the conversation the struggles we're facing around climate change in Colombia and the damage this is causing, and of course climate change is having an impact on these forests. The bark beetles are having, well, they're not dying off in the winters, and the trees don't have their defences because they don't have enough water to make the sap which repels them. So we went into that. These are the trees in the green, the glass house. It's in several sections. There's about 400 metres from the Mamadok space is a glass house, which is where they keep the young trees from the orangery during the winters, and we filled it with trunks that have been contaminated by and surrounding that is a sound installation. It's 3 hours on an 8-channel kind of tracks with sounds of the forests in Colombia, in Chocó, in our region, but also stories of people that have been affected by the war, the 60-year civil war. So there are testimonies of people that are victims of that conflict and combinations of sounds.
Yeah, for any of you, if you are going in the next days to Kassel, the program is, we invited 2 commissioners of the Truth Report that is going to be published in Colombia, and it is the study of the truth, and how would you put that? The Truth Report? The commissioner, it is the inform of the 50 or 60 years of conflict in Colombia after the signing peace with the FARC. So it's going to be launched these days, and we are inviting 2 of the commissioners to talk in our space about the construction of this report. But it's beautiful because one of the commissioners is the one who focuses on testimonies of people who have been victims of violence. We included these testimonies in our soundscape together horizontally with all the other testimonies of nature, because nature is out there and nature is suffering a lot the consequences of the war, and we cannot measure that because nature cannot tell us in voices, human voices. So we bring these 2 voices together to in this environment of wood dying, as if it was like a beautiful, huge coffin, because it's like really heavy trunks put like this, like really organized, and they are all dying or dead wood. So it's a nice contrast, the sound and the material.
There's been a tension between producing something which is something physical that kind of looks like art, when we really work with processes and communities. So we've had to juggle the kind of desire of the production team and the company that is Documenta with the artistic concept of Lumbum, brought to us by the artistic team. So we tried to find a balance between bringing the people to activate the space, but at the same time producing something which is physical, that people can go and reflect on when we're not there and when the space isn't active.